Suzuki's out of the mix as of right now, and it's Mike Tauchman, a 32-year-old journeyman who has never had a better year than the one he had in 2019 when he had an 865 OPS, a 277 batting average for the New York Yankees, has fallen off the map completely since that year. And all of a sudden, the Illinois native who went to Bradley comes back home and loves playing in Wrigley Field, apparently, because he's looked like a really good player. What is his future long term?
Look, forget about long term. I mean, he's right now, and he won that job. And people have gotten on to me, Charlie, because I said that I really like what David Ross has done as manager. And I like the clubhouse. I like the culture that he's created. I think he's done a nice job with the players that are there. And this is where I'm going with this. Mike Tauchman isn't the guy that was paid big money to come from overseas and play right field. I still like Seiya Suzuki, but Mike Tauchman has earned that position. He's taken over the job in right field. He makes the Cubs better. And I'm not just talking about the home run that he hit to beat the Mets Tuesday night. I'm just saying in general. I mean, this guy has been so good, and he's a big part of this team. So, talking with Jesse Rogers, he said, hey, it's Cody Bellinger, it's Dansby Swanson, and it's Mike Tauchman.
He's going into 33 years of age this offseason. On the show today, we're talking about what do the Cubs potentially do with Mike Tauchman? Is he a little, I'm not going to say long-term solution, but is he a multi-year solution at the right field position? And maybe Seiya Suzuki is not the answer there, despite being paid a whole lot more. Tauchman's making $720,000 this year. $720K, which is peanuts in the major leagues. The Cubs brought Tauchman in on a minor league contract, and here he is starting at the leadoff position, leading the Cubs to a potential first place finish in the National League Central. At least they're trajecting towards that. So $720K for him. Seiya Suzuki is making $17 million, and it's Tauchman who is getting the start. Let's give you a little deep dive of who Mike Tauchman is. So, as I mentioned, played his collegiate baseball at Bradley from Illinois. His OPS is at 816. And for those of you that don't look at the advanced metrics and don't know what the on-base plus slugging really is, it's not the guide for everything in terms of how good a player is. But to me, it's kind of like a credit score. A skewed credit score. But if you're over 800 at an OPS, unless you've only played 2 or 3 games, there's no fooling it. Like if you're over an 800 OPS, you've had a really good season. Tauchman's at 816 right now. This is a player that's never played more than 87 games in a lone season. He did that with the Yankees in 2019, was very solid when he had an 865 OPS, hit 277 with 13 home runs and 47 RBIs. Again, that was in half the season. That's about a 20 home run and 80 RBI projection had he played that entire year for the Yankees. So the question becomes, he turns 33 this offseason. You have a player in Owen Casey that's probably your right fielder of the future, but he's only 21 years of age. So you figure maybe 23 is when you bring up Casey. Could Mike Tauchman be this stop plug for 2 years or a year and a half? Has Tauchman earned it?
Well, look, what you got to remember, too, is the future of right field isn't Seiya Suzuki or Mike Tauchman. It's actually Owen Casey. And he was the guy that the Cubs got for Yu Darvish from San Diego. And he's in Double-A right now, leading the league in home runs. And he's second in runs batted in. And his batting average is top 10. And he's an excellent defender. In the long term, he's going to end up in that spot, and he's going to be another star player that the Cubs are developing. I just can't imagine the future without him there. So Mike Tauchman, you know what? If he's doing what he's doing right now and the team's winning, I say, hey, forget about what's going to happen in the future. Let's just do it right now and see where this team goes. And if Mike Tauchman plays like this next year, well, you know what? Right field's his. It's going to be hard for any, management, whether it be the front office or the skipper of the team, to take a guy out of the lineup that makes that much of a difference to the success that the team's having.
Well, what do you do with Suzuki? That's the big question here, because he is making so much money, and you just assume when you're paying someone all this money, and it goes back to, I'm going to weave in the Cincinnati Reds, a National League Central foe. They brought in Shogo Akiyama a couple of years ago to be their starting center fielder. They paid him a ton of money to come in from Japan and be their guy was a star in Japan, came in, and the Reds realized right away, this isn't working. It was the COVID season, and he just didn't play great. They gave him another chance the next year, and through half the year, he was down in AAA, and they said, we're paying this guy a ton of money. Let's just cut our losses. He can go back to Japan, and it is what it is. Suzuki, it seems like there's at least a platoon role or something off the bench for him, but with all the money that he's making, what do you do with him?
Well, I mean, as far as the Cubs go, it kind of reminds me of Fukudomi when he came over from Japan, and you wonder, like, is it going to be a Fukudomi situation where you see a guy that's not the worst player on the team, but not the star that you hope they'd be, or is it Yu Darvish, or is it, Shohei Ohtani, where they come over and they're an absolute superstar going way back, Hideo Nomo? I mean, it's been a tough struggle for some guys to transition from the Japanese game to the American game of baseball. And, maybe this is just part of that process for Seiya. Maybe he's playing injured and we haven't seen the best of him. When I watch him, it just seems like he's, fooled by the off speed and behind the fastball, and I think that happens in the course of the game when you're really searching to try to find yourself. So he's paid a lot of money. We know that the scouts that saw him, there were a lot of other teams that wanted him, believe that eventually he's going to figure it out. The problem is that we don't have time for him to figure it out right now at the major league level with where this team is. You're talking about a 3-horse race at the top of the Central Division. You're talking about a Cubs team right now that is surging. They're the team that you don't want to play in baseball. And Mike Tauchman's the guy that makes the Cubs better. Seiya Suzuki's the guy that you're paying a lot of money to try to figure it out. And maybe he does. And who knows? I mean, it's a long season. Maybe by the end of the year, he's a guy that is helping the Cubs, and it's not Tauchman. But right now, Tauchman's the man.